All right, so I want to speak about a concept that may or may not be relevant to the work that you are doing um, for on the homework or in the that you will do on the test. But let's talk about it anyway. So we have this thing called the discriminant. Discriminant. All right, so we have this thing called the discriminant, and it comes from the quadratic formula, right? So we have this discriminant, and here's what a discriminant is. It's this part, b squared minus 4ac. Remember, recall, this is what a discriminant is. It's b squared minus 4ac. And what does it come from? It comes from the quadratic formula, which says x equals minus b. I'm trying to settle my recording device here. Okay. Discriminant says comes from, again, the quadratic formula. Quadratic formula. So the discriminant comes from the quadratic formula. And the quadratic formula says x equals minus b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. That is what that's what the quadratic formula says. And the discriminant is the b squared minus 4ac part right here, the thing underneath the square root. All right, and that's going to be important because what happens underneath the square root determines the kind of solutions that we have. All right, so here it is. So if we have the discriminant is, if a discriminant is 0, so b squared minus 4ac, again we call this the discriminant. If that is equal to 0, so if the discriminant is equal to 0, then we have, if the discriminant is equal to 0, we have 1, right? 1, or we just call it 1 repeated, mean the same number twice. 1 repeated rational solution. So the discriminant is 0. We have 1 repeated rational solution. All right, so let's just do a quick example, right? So if you have, let's look at this. Let's look at this. So let's suppose we have x squared plus 6x plus 9 is equal to 0, right? So let's look at that. X squared plus 6x plus 9 is equal to 0. We want to solve this using the quadratic formula. Well, first you have to note that a is equal to 1, invisible 1 here, right? Invisible 1 there. B is equal to 6. B equals 6, and C equals 9. So A equals 1, B equals 6, C equals 9. And so the solution to x squared plus 6x plus 9 would just be x equals minus 6 plus or minus the square root of 9 squared minus, b squared rather, sorry, of 6 squared rather. 6 squared minus 4 times 4 times b, 4ac rather, 4 times 1, sorry about that guys, times c, which is 9, all over 2 times 1. So that's going to be minus 6 plus or minus the square root of 6 squared. 6 squared is 36, minus 4 times 1 times 9 is going to be 36. over 2. 2 times 1 is 2. And so what we're going to have here is minus 6 plus or minus the square root of 0. Do you see the discriminant here is 0? This is the discriminant. Remember? This was going to be, this here is b squared. This is minus 4ac. So that was a discriminant that we have under the root right here. This is a discriminant. And it turned out to be, the discriminant turned out to be 0. And you saw what happened, right? If discriminant is 0, then obviously plus or minus 0 gives you the same thing. So it's going to be, basically it's going to be minus 6 plus 0 over 2, which is going to be negative 3. All right? Or minus 6 minus 0 over 2. Minus 6 minus 0 over 2 is still going to give you negative 3. So you got one repeated rational solution. So it's the same solution repeated. And so that's what we have there, right? All right, so now let's move on to the other cases. I'm not going to do an example for everything because the video is going to be too long if I do. But just note that if b squared minus 4ac is greater than 0, all right, then what we have here